15 spine-chilling ghosts exposed on camera, terrifying moments of haunted paranormal activity. The Harrisons thought they were moving into a quaint little slice of suburbia. Crestwood. It all seemed picturesque on paper, but once they set foot inside their slightly shabby new home, the thrill of settling in turned quickly to dread. An unshakable weight seemed to settle over the house, heavy as the dark clouds swirling ominously above their heads. Shadows flitted across the walls as they unpacked, flickering like the dying light of an old street lamp outside. It felt wrong in a way that sent shivers down their spines. Mark and Julia, filled with naivety, eagerly launched their new social media series, 15 spine-chilling ghosts exposed on camera. Haunting explorations? Yes, please. 10-year-old Emily and her 8-year-old brother Jake excitedly cheered them on, baking cookies as the perfect backdrop for a family of paranormal investigators. Unfortunately, their charming facade crumbled faster than the crumbling sidewalks in their neighborhood. As night swallowed the last rays of sunlight, the atmosphere grew thick with an unnameable dread. Footsteps echoed down empty hallways, cold chills ran down Julia's spine because these sounds were not made by her own family. They weren't just settling noises, they were deep, haunting beats that seemed alive. Mark's attempts to capture these ghastly sounds on camera blurred the line between bravado and fear, igniting a nightmare deeper than they ever imagined. "Did you hear that?" Emily whispered, clutching Jake's hand as they peered into the darkened corners of their home. Shadows danced just beyond their flashlights, dark tendrils of nothingness that slithered away as soon as they looked. How could they film a haunting if they were terrified? Mark and Julia tried to brush their fears aside, rationalizing the occurrences as the eccentricities of an older home. But rationality couldn't explain the figure Julia glimpsed darting across the yard one night, her heart racing as she managed to catch only a fleeting shadow. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Their neighbors began to act strangely, avoiding eye contact, exchanging hurried whispers behind closed doors. Friends turned into shadows, and with each awkward encounter, a veil of unease tightened around the Harrisons. As curiosity turned into fear, Mark and Julia delved deeper into the history of their home. The murky past unfolded like a nightmare, betrayed families, sudden disappearances, and secrets buried deep. Nights turned into hellish vigils, the cameras captured disjointed screams mixed with the relentless rain that rattled against the windows. With each passing moment, trust evaporated like the daylight. Their once reliable car refused to start, and every route out of Crestwood felt insurmountably blocked by an unseen force. Was it paranoia? Or something more sinister? A gust of wind crashed against the house, blending with low, ghostly whispers that seemed to murmur haunting truths. When a neighbor they thought had been a friend stood at the door, words hanging like the heavy air between them, Mark's heart raced. "You shouldn't have dug so deep," echoed like an eerie promise left unfulfilled, before the slam of the door erased any chance of escape. As the light in their world dimmed, a shattering revelation loomed. The ghostly figure with hollow eyes had returned. The Harrisons, trapped within their own home, stood paralyzed. The stage was set, and the ghosts of Crestwood awaited their next move. But would they live to share their story, or become the next dark secret hidden behind the walls? The air grew thicker, pressing down on the Harrisons like a heavy quilt, suffocating them from every angle. Each whisper of wind rattled the window panes, a reminder that outside reality felt far removed from their own. The dread that filled their home was palpable, a living thing that twisted around them, making it hard to breathe. Julia's voice trembled as she glanced over her shoulder, though the house itself seemed impossibly empty. What if we've unleashed something? What if there really is something here? Mark brushed his hand through his hair, trying to shake off her words. It's just old wood and noises. We'll get through this. We can't let a few odd sounds scare us. Let's check the basement. Emily and Jake, wide-eyed, glanced at each other but stayed close, their small hands clutching the flashlight's beam as they descended the stairs into darkness. The basement smelled stale and damp, a creeping scent of mold and decay that made their stomachs churn. As they stepped farther down into the cold depths, Julia felt a shiver creep up her spine. A soft, chilling breeze brushed past her, but she convinced herself it was just her imagination working overtime. They carefully swept the beam of light around the concrete walls, revealing the remnants of a forgotten space. "Look!" Jake exclaimed, pointing to a corner where a series of old, dusty boxes lay stacked. "What's in there?" Mark approached, his heart pounding louder than the echoing silence that filled the room. "Probably junk. Old toys, maybe some clothes." His voice faltered as he reached for the top box, fingers trembling slightly. Julia held her breath, fear clawing at her throat. With one hard pull, the box toppled sideways, spilling its contents onto the floor. Papers, yellowed with age, fluttered out in a chaotic flurry. Among the debris lay a small, rusted key, and intertwined with the papers, photographs of families with hauntingly familiar faces, their expressions dark, shadows clinging to them like a shroud. "What's this?" Emily said, crouching down to pick up a photograph. The girl in the picture looked exactly like her, down to the wild curls and freckled nose. Mark exchanged a glance with Julia, dread pooling in his gut. "Put it down. We don't know what it is." Where once curiosity bloomed, now a wild panic took root. Julia reached for the other papers, desperation fueling her reaction. "We have to figure this out. There has to be something here that explains what's happening." Suddenly, the lights in the basement flickered violently, leaving them in darkness save for their shaky flashlight. A low rumble echoed from deep within the house, shaking the walls, the floor beneath them pulsing with a heartbeat of its own. "Mom!" Jake yelped, gripping his sister's arm tightly. "Stay close!" Julia shouted, her eyes wide open, scanning the corners with frantic desperation. Just as Mark turned to assure them everything was fine, a loud crash erupted from upstairs, a sound that brought with it a new wave of terror. "Did you hear that?" Emily whispered. The whimper in her voice cut through the oppressive air, thickening the dread around them. Mark's heart raced violently. "We need to leave now." He cast another glance at the scattered photos and the key. Something deep in his gut told him they were linked to whatever was now stalking them. But before they could flee, the basement door slammed shut with a deafening bang, trapping them inside. Shadows moved along the walls, forming shapes that twisted into grotesque figures. The faint sound of laughter echoed in the dim light. The atmosphere crackled with a deep, unsettling energy. Faces long gone seemed to peer through the darkness, watching. Waiting. And then, the laughter turned into a deep, chilling voice that resonated in their ears. "You shouldn't have pride. You'll need the key, but can you endure the truth?" With those final words, the images in the photographs began to blur, blending into a chaotic mosaic of terror that consumed them. The Harrisons stood frozen, the darkness closing in. Would the key unlock more than just the door? Would it set loose what they thought lay buried forever? Next door, an echo of whispers promised answers nothing could prepare them for. The basement seemed to pulse with life, the air thickening like the walls were closing in. Julia pressed her back against the cold concrete, heart hammering like a drum. Another crash came from above, shaking the floor beneath them as if the house were alive, groaning in pain. "Mark, what do we do?" She barely got the words out, her voice barely more than a whisper as the shadows twisted in the dim light, mocking them. Mark's gaze darted around, wild with panic. We have to get out. The key, maybe it can open the door." "Try it." Jake exclaimed, his voice breaking with fear as he pointed wildly at the key lying in the mess. Mark scrambled to reach it, his fingers shaking as he picked it up. The key felt unnaturally cold, almost alive, as he held it in his palm. As he approached the door, a loud thud echoed from the other side, making him flinch. "Just hurry," Julia urged, her voice rising in urgency. He turned the key, a heavy click breaking the sinister silence. The shadows seemed to retreat momentarily, as if fearing the freedom the key promised. They strained toward the door, desperate for escape. But the door wouldn't budge. It stuck. He yelled, pushing with his shoulder. From somewhere in the house came a low, guttural growl that sent chills racing down their spines. "Let us out!" Julia screamed, claws of panic wrapping around her throat. "Stay calm," Mark shouted, even as his heart raced, pounding like a warning drum. He pulled harder, but the door held steadfast. The laughter returned faint, taunting, like a distant echo of innocence twisted into something vile. The air swirled around them, growing colder, the temperature dropping until they all shivered. "Mom, there's something," Emily's voice faltered as her flashlight flickered wildly, the beam revealing fleeting shadows darting in and out of the corners. They looked like faces watching, waiting. "There's no one here," Julia whispered, almost to herself, though she didn't believe it. A knot of dread settled in her stomach as she faced the darkness, her mind racing. Suddenly, the laughter crescendoed, filling the space with an almost palpable malice. It rose and fell like a wave, crashing over them, wrapping them in a cocoon of terror. "Mark!" Julia yelled, reaching for him, but panic had taken hold. The laughter twisted, shaping into a voice ripe with menace. "Don't resist. All who come here belong to us now." "Shut up!" Mark screamed, but the very walls seemed to absorb his words, suffocating him, drowning him in despair. The battered door shifted, a slow grinding sound echoing through the chaos as if responding to some unseen force. "I can't take this," Jake whimpered, his terrified face illuminated by the flickering flashlight. "I want to go home." Home. The word echoed in Julia's head. She fought through the nightmare rising around them, searching for any glimmer of light. "We can't lose hope." But hope felt far away, like a whisper in the wind. Just then, a cut of light pierced through the stifling darkness, the basement window. Tight, small, but it was there. "Emily. Jake. We can climb out," Mark shouted, moving fast to the glass, but a shadow darted past, twisting in the beam. He froze, eyes widening. "Did you see that?" "I'm not going near that," Julia shrieked, backing away. The darkness writhed as if fueled by their fear, entwining itself around them. Then, without warning, the temperature plummeted further. Julia gasped as the apparition of a woman flickered into existence at the edge of the light, a ghostly figure, eyes hollow, mouth twisted in a silent scream. "What do you need?" It seemed to ask, though no sound came forth. The shadows roared, consuming the light as the woman reached for them, a hand stretching through time and horror. Mark stepped backward, terror blanketing the basement. "We have to make a choice," he said, the reality dawning with the force of an oncoming storm. With just a handful of breaths left, the air electric with dread, they faced the ghost that loomed before them. But what could they ever truly surrender to escape? And as they stared into the depths of the phantom's eyes, the darkness deepened around them, whispering, "Will you join us?" Time hung with chilling finality, awaiting their answer as fear twisted into desperation. What happened next would bind them forever, or tear them apart. The flicker of the ghost's hand sent a jolt through Julia, electrifying the air. Shadows wriggled and danced, stretching like contorted hands reaching out for warmth, for life. Mark's breath quickened as the ghost's hollow eyes locked onto his, and he felt himself teetering on the brink of that ghastly void. "Mark, don't." Julia's voice cut through the haze, but it felt weak, muted by the overwhelming dread. The ghost's mouth moved, forming silent words, yet the basement was filled with the echo of their fears. "Your choice or eternal darkness." "What choice?" Mark managed, his voice trembling. The floor beneath them trembled as the spirit let out a moan that vibrated through the walls. Julia clenched her fists, teeth gritted against the freezing air. "Anything but this. What if we give it what it wants?" Jake's whisper was barely audible, his face pale and stricken with shock. "Isn't that what it means, join it?" No. Julia's voice erupted, a shielded fire. We're not giving in. The shadows thickened at her resolve, swirling violently, and she felt the darkness push against her body, squeezing her will. She looked down at the basement floor, cracked and filthy, where dreams had once been exchanged for screams. Their panic grew, hearts pounding out a chaotic rhythm. Emily pressed her back against the wall, her flashlight flickering. I don't want to stay here. What's south wrong with this place? Mark's eyes narrowed, desperation clawing at him. We're not surrendering. We need to fight. The voices from the walls hissed at him in response, a symphony of despair that clawed at the edges of sanity. He had little choice. Maybe we can hold out. It'll let us go if we stay strong. Suddenly, as if in response to their fear, the air thickened further, an almost tangible presence wrapping around them, choking away hope. Mark stepped forward, the cold sweat on his hands making the key more difficult to hold. We can distract it, just long enough to break through the door. With no time to waste, he hurled the key toward the corner, where the shadows screamed in fury, momentarily disoriented by the clang of metal against stone. Go. Now. Mark yelled. They lunged towards the window, adrenaline surging as they clawed their way toward escape. But the shadows recoiled and surged with newfound fury. The ghost lunged forward, fingertips brushing against Mark's skin. He recoiled in horror, icy fingers dancing along his arm. Stay with us. Look out. Julia screamed, pushing him aside as a wave of darkness crashed into them, pulling them back into the abyss. They stumbled, grappling against the weight of terror that threatened to consume them. Help. Please. Emily shouted, her voice splintering into a panic-laden echo that vibrated off the walls. The laughter returned, swirling around them in a mocking tone. With a surge of strength, Julia grabbed Emily's hand. Not now. She turned sharply, desperation urging them all forward while her heart thudded against her ribcage like a war drum. Around them, the ghost swirled and flickered, an image wavering, then coalescing into something more horrifying, a mass of writhing faces, souls twisted in eternal mourning. Each face screamed silently, blending into a cacophony of horror. Climb! Mark shouted at the window, but the shadows coiled tighter, threatening to drag them down. With one last push, they scrambled toward the opening, but it felt impossibly far. Mark glanced back in time to see the ghost's face twist into a terrifying grin. Join us! The walls shuddered and the basement seemed to collapse inward, shadows creeping toward them like a predatory beast. Mark screamed as he felt an unseen force wrap around his ankle, dragging him down. Just as he was about to scream for help, a flicker of light burst in the darkness. Hope surged within him. For a moment it illuminated their path, a lifeline. But that flicker was swallowed almost instantly by the gathering dark. Mark! Julia cried, reaching out desperately as he was dragged backward, disappearing into the shadows. Then, silence enveloped the basement, and in that stillness, the ghost's whisper lingered. One is ours, will you join? The stifling air thickened with uncertainty as Julia faced the silhouette of enduring dread, the phantom's eyes still fixed on her. She took a breath, her heart pounding. There was no way out, yet. What would she do to free herself and Emily? What boundary was she willing to cross? In this nightmare, the ultimate choice lay ahead, and time was slipping away. The silence in the basement was suffocating. Julia's heart felt like a drum in her chest, thumping furiously against the weights of dread that pressed down. Mark, she whispered, desperation lacing her voice as she turned toward the darkness from which he had been taken. The atmosphere vibrated with a low hum, as if the house itself were alive, dinning on their fear. Emily stood beside her, trembling, eyes wide like saucers, darting nervously around. What do we do? She stammered, her voice shaking. The way the shadows coiled and twisted made it hard to think, hard to breathe. Could this really be happening? Stay close to me, Julia replied firmly, despite the tremor in her own voice. We have to find a way out. But as soon as she spoke, a deep rumble reverberated through the floor, knocking Emily off balance. She screamed, the sound echoing harshly, like glass hitting concrete. The laughter returned, mocking them, swirling through the air with a chill that danced along their skin. Suddenly, the shadows pulsed, shifting and curling into a figure. The ghost was back, face twisting with malice, and another voice seeped through the silence, thicker than fog. One will join, or all will be lost. Julia felt the world tilt. No. Get away from us. She shouted, feeling a fierce wave of defiance sweep through her. She had to stay strong. She couldn't let this thing take more. She locked eyes with Emily and felt a fleeting moment of solidarity, an understanding that they'd face this together. Before Julia could catch her breath, the ghost lunged at her, its icy fingers grazing her arm. Pain shot through her, a jolt that spread like fire. She gasped, the world blurring at the edges. Emily! She cried, grasping for her friend's hand, desperately anchoring herself. Run! Emily screamed as she pulled away, scrambling toward a corner of the room that had suddenly become an invitingly dark expanse. You can't leave me! Julia shouted, leaving her own safety behind to reach for Emily, who was already slipping inside the consuming shadow, her features momentarily illuminating in the flickering light. Don't let it take you! Julia screamed, feeling a rush of fear like ice water through her veins. The laugh echoed again, a cruel harmony that danced on the edges of madness. The ghost hissed, its shape undulating as Julia stumbled back against the wall, trying to understand its next move. What do you want from us? She shouted, voice cracking, desperation blossoming inside her. The ghost's face contorted into a sickening smile that boasted rows of jagged teeth, each one glistening laced with remnants of despair. You know, your friend has already made a choice. No. The realization hit hard. Mark's voice reverberated through her mind. He wouldn't give in. But behind each flicker of light, each wisp of shadow, the specter twisted, confirming her deepest fears. It was drawing them into an eternal game, one where they played against their very own souls. In that moment, Julia felt something crack inside her. Rage took hold. I want to go quietly. You hear me? She glanced at the window again, its opening framing a world that felt hours away. It was her only choice. She lunged in that direction, jostling between the churning darkness and the taunting figure of the ghost. Emily's cry cracked the air again, both terrified and fierce. Wait! Together. They dashed toward the window, but the darkness twisted tight around their ankles, a clammy grip like a predator's hold. Julia tore herself free, clawing at the air, at the wall, at anything that could give her just a few more feet. The room pulsed as the figures swarmed, a chaotic mass humming with anticipation. Julia pushed forward, willing her body to respond, heart-racing fear spinning in tandem with hope. Just as they reached the cusp of the window, a blinding light flared through the hope she thought lost sparked once more. But as the shadows danced with the brightness, it became clear, nothing was as it seemed. The blinding light flickered, and then dimmed. Julia! Emily's scream echoed. Through the darkness, growing distant, muffled, as it pushed them into nightmare. And in that moment, Julia grasped the elusive answer hidden within the shadows. A choice had to be made, hold on to hope or embrace despair. But as the last semblance of light snuffed out, she knew the shadows were laughing, waiting for her answer. What price would she pay to escape? Would she join the one who was lost, or would she fight against the abyss? The moment the darkness engulfed Julia completely, a heavy weight pressed against her chest, as if suffocating her spirit. She could feel the shadows swirling, their icy breath creeping over her skin, settling in the pit of her stomach like venom. The world outside faded into a muted hum, and it was just her and the encroaching void. Julia, a whisper drifted through the damp air, a tentative voice, soft yet charged with an unmistakable urgency. It sliced through her despair, pulling her focus. Was it Mark? She strained to listen, heart racing, desperate for a sign that he was still with them. But just as quickly as it came, the voice was swallowed by a belly laugh that echoed off the cold, damp walls. The specter was still there, gathered in the corner, the same hate-filled snarl turned towards her, every inch of its ghastly form writhing with anticipation. "You think hope will save you?" it taunted. "You are wrong, little girl." The shadows flared, licking around her, dragging her toward their insatiable maw. Julia stumbled backwards, her foot caught on something slick and unyielding, dragging her further down. "Emily!" she shouted, panic ripping in her throat. Where was her friend? In the oppressive blackness, movement drew her gaze. A slight figure staggered forward, illuminated by a flicker from the nearest fading bulb. Julia stared, a rush of emotion coursing through her. Emily was fighting against the shadows, her small frame determined yet wavering. "I want to leave you," she yelled, voice cutting through the laughter like a knife. But barely a breath later, the ghost shot forward, its gnarled fingers outstretched. Julia felt time freeze, dread spilling over as the thing lunged for her. With a wild instinct, she sidestepped, but it was too quick, too hungry. A sharp gasp escaped her lips as the ghost's icy grip latched onto her, its chill seeping through her bone. She couldn't breathe. The shadows swirled, intermingling with tendrils of despair that settled over her like a shroud. And then, as suddenly as it began, the grip released, tossing her aside like a rag doll. "Choose," the ghost hissed, its voice laced with a chilling finality. "Join him. Take his place or be lost forever." Julia's mind raced. Mark was gone. But was he truly lost? A scene replayed in her mind: Mark's laughter, the way he brushed aside their fears, the warmth of his presence. "Fight." She heard him in her thoughts. "Don't let go." With shaking hands, Julia clawed at the wall, determined not to lose herself to the darkness. She turned, desperate to find Emily, to feel the comfort of a shared fear. The basement was shifting, the walls bending, squeezing her within a nightmare that morphed at will. "Emily!" she called out again, voice splintering. The shadows twisted, mocking her, pulling at the seams of her resolve. "Don't leave me." Something shifted. There Emily was entwined within the ghost's grasp, her features ghostly pale, eyes wide with terror. "Julia!" she cried, voice soaked with fear. "Help!" The sight sent a bolt of adrenaline through Julia. The ghost released a chilling laugh, and at that moment, Julia understood. She could fight. They could fight together. Summoning every ounce of strength she had, she charged forward, pushing against the grasp of despair that threatened to claim her. As the darkness encroached like a living entity, she screamed, "I want to let you take her." The ghost twisted, its face a tapestry of rage and hunger as Julia flung herself at Emily, grasping her hand. "Together!" Julia shouted, feeling warmth pouring from their clasped palms. Shadows recoiled, thrashing wildly as if a storm surged within. But just when hope surged in her chest, the brightness flickered again, threatening to consume them both. The air crackled, and she knew the fleeting moment of energy could vanish at any second. Was this the answer? The connection? "Let us break this together!" Julia roared, pushing through the darkness, the pulse of their fear becoming a shared heartbeat, frantic yet unyielding. They needed to choose. Yet just as hope surged, chaos erupted. The ghost lunged, and Julia felt the panic rise again. The shadows were closing in faster than she could react. Would they have enough strength to escape? Desperation clawed at her. In a split second, she caught Emily's terrified gaze. And the last fragment of light glimmering before its ominous snuff left Julia breathless. Could they find a way through the madness? Or would despair swallow them whole? The moment Julia's fingers locked around Emily's, an electric charge jolted through the air. The shadows hissed, recoiling as if stung. But just as Julia felt the warmth of hope igniting, she sensed a tremor beneath her feet, a deep rumble that echoed through the darkness, shaking her to the core. "Hold on!" Julia yelled, tightening her grip. She felt Emily's fragile fingers respond, a desperate lifeline that amplified their shared resolve. In that moment of connection, they forged a bond that felt almost tangible, a dwindling ember igniting against encroaching night. But then, the ground quaked violently. The ghost swirled, its laughter mingling with the rumble of the earth, a cacophony of terror that nipped at their resolve. "You can't escape your fate," it screeched, lurching toward them with clawed hands extended, each fingertip sharp like daggers. "Join him or watch her perish." "Julia." Emily's voice broke through the din, a raw plea that echoed like a bell tolling the end. Julia turned sharply, the shadows flickering fearfully. "No!" she shouted. "I want to let you take her." A burst of anger surged from Julia, fueled by fear and desperation. Drawing all her strength, she yanked Emily close, and together they pushed against the tide of darkness, the cold scraping at their ankles. The walls pulsed and throbbed, a living thing intent on trapping them in its cold embrace. Julia felt the walls close in, ready to crush them in the relentless grip of despair. "We have to move," she gasped, dragging Emily with her, the fragile warmth slipping away as the shadows clawed back. They stumbled into a small clearing where the darkness dissipated slightly, allowing a flicker of dim light to breach the void. Breathing heavily, Julia cast a desperate glance around, seeking a way out. "Where do we go?" she panted, realizing the truth. There was no exit. Shadows loomed ominously, stretching towards them with twisted anticipation. Emily shivered beside her. "I don't know, but we have to find Mark." The name sent ice through Julia's veins. Mark was gone. But if he wasn't lost, if they could reach him somehow, then maybe he could help. Maybe he's in the light, Julia thought aloud, a frantic plan forming. "If we can get to the light, we might find him." The ghost's laughter erupted once more, punctuating their efforts. "The light? There's no light here. Just endless darkness. You'll betray one another. Just you wait." Julia shook her head, pushing through the weight of the ghost's taunts. The shadows pressed closer, serpentine fingers stretching hungrily, yet she could feel her heart pounding in unison with Emily's. "We won't betray each other. We're stronger together." Suddenly, the ground split beneath them, a black chasm yawning wide, threatening to swallow them whole. Julia stumbled, her foot slipping over broken stones as the swirling darkness beckoned with icy fingers. "Julia! Help!" Emily cried, clinging to the edge, her grasp slipping over loose gravel and dirt. "No!" Julia fell instinctively, grabbing Emily's arm, pulling with desperate strength. The grip of fear clawed at her throat, but the fire of survival burned brighter within her. With a final heave, she pulled Emily up just as the shadows lashed out like whips, cracking through the air where they had been moments before. They fell back against the edge of the chasm, breathless and wide-eyed. "Look!" Emily gasped, pointing towards a faint light at the other end of the darkness. It flickered, breathing softly amid the chaos, like a candle against the storm. "It has to be an exit." But the ghost roared with fury, a twisting mass of shadows forming, blocking their path. "You cannot wander there. You belong to me. Together." Julia shouted, and without thinking, she stepped toward the light, pulling Emily along. The shadows lunged and snarled, ripping through the air between them, but Julia's heart raced with a fierce certainty. They stepped into the light, but as it enveloped them, a searing pain shot through Julia's body. Was it hope? Or was it the ghost's vengeance striking at their joy? The world spun. And suddenly the fear melted into the brightness. Julia felt a brief exhilaration until darkness surged back, swallowing their cries like the night consumes the day. Where were they now? Had they escaped, or had they been drawn into an even darker web? In that liminal moment, a shadowish tendril coiled around her ankle, yanking her back, stretching the thin boundary between light and dark. And just when Julia thought it would end, she heard a familiar voice calling her name, echoing through the void, a voice she feared was lost forever. Julia come back, a chilling realization washed over her. Was it Mark? Or was it the ghost attempting to seduce her back into despair? The darkness whispered sweetly, as if luring her to the grave. Would she choose to follow him, or fight the growing shadows closing in again? The ceaseless darkness enveloped them, swallowing Julia and Emily deeper into its suffocating grasp. Julia's heart raced as the voice echoed again, familiar yet tinged with a terrifying allure. "Julia, come back." It was Mark's voice, a haunting lullaby that beckoned her with the promise of safety, threatening to unravel her tether to reality. "Emily." Julia gasped, clutching her friend's hand tighter. The shadows writhed around them, and she could feel despair clawing at her throat. "We have to keep moving. We can't let him pull us back." But Emily faltered, her eyes bright with confusion and longing. "What if it is him, Julia? What if we can still save him? He needs us." "Stop!" Julia shouted, jerking Emily back as another shadow swiped perilously close to them. "We know he's lost, and the ghost is just trying to trick us." A sharp, eerie laugh slithered through the void. The ghost's warped face cracked through the shades, eyes like glowing coals. "Clever, clever girls. But illusions only work if you want to believe them." With a churning urgency, Julia pulled Emily away from the flickering light that seemed to pulse with Mark's voice. "We can't believe anything it says. Trust me." They stumbled back, the ground trembling beneath them, vibrating with a new intensity. In the distance, a tempest brewed, swirling shadowy tendrils coming closer, grasping, pulling. Each moment stretched thin like fragile cobwebs, and the air was thick and rancid, suffocating their resolve. "Julia, please." Emily's voice quivered, flooded with fear. "What if Mark is the key? We can't just abandon him." Julia turned sharply. Empathy wrestled with dread in her chest. If they let their guards down, if they succumbed to the fragmented slivers of hope the shadows dangled before them, it could mean their ultimate doom. "If he really is in there," she whispered, "we'll be trapped forever." The ground shook violently again, and a fissure cracked open beside them, grumbling like a live volcano. They risked a glance, the chasm blacker than the endless night surrounding them. Dark whispers crawled from its depths, promising secrets and strength, urging them to forsake reality and surrender. "Mark, is that you?" Emily echoed the voice, her eyes glistening with tears. Julia squeezed her hand harder, panic flooding her veins. They could easily succumb to the tempting promises that danced, tantalizing and almost real. "Close your eyes," Julia shouted, tears streaming down her cheeks. "No matter what you hear, don't listen." With a deep breath, she pulled Emily along, urging her to step away from the seductive darkness, but the shadows suddenly slammed against them, swirling around like a tempest. They were losing their grip, the darkness thick like smoke, stinging their eyes. "We can't give up. We will find a way." Julia screamed, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of fear-inducing laughter. But then, just when all seemed hopeless, Julia thought she saw a flicker of light far away, stronger than before. With renewed determination, she called out, "Emily! Look! We have to push through." They stumbled forward, hearts pounding, breaths shallow. Ghostly fingers clawed at their backs, yanking, pulling, as if trying to reclaim what belonged to them. The shadows roared in fury, drowning out the light as it flared. "Come back!" The voice of Mark yelled one last time, a wrenching cry that reached for them like a final grasp at freedom before fading into an echo. A spine-chilling cold seeped into Julia's bones. She could feel their strength dwindling, could sense the darkness conspiring to pull them apart. Each step felt heavier, burdened by the weight of their choices. Then, they were engulfed by the light, a surge of warmth blossoming around them, giving them the strength to press on. Just as they thought they had escaped the grasping tendrils, a new shadow emerged, larger than ever, twisting and contorting into a grotesque figure that loomed before them. "Fools! You believe you can leave? You are not so easily forgotten." The menacing shadow lunged at them, and in that moment, Julia realized the truth. They hadn't escaped, they had entered a deeper nightmare. And as she felt the darkness wrap around them like a suffocating blanket, doubt crept in. Could they truly fight the darkness? Or were they forever bound to it, just like Mark? Time was running out. Would they find a way out before the shadow consumed them? Or would despair swallow all hope entirely? The grotesque figure loomed larger, its shape swirling like dark smoke, shifting and morphing in ways that defied logic. Julia's gaze was locked onto its ghastly visage, the face a twisted mockery of familiarity. Its voice sliced through the air, a chilling blend of Mark's tone and something profoundly wrong. "Do you understand now?" It hissed, the sound slithering into their minds. "You cannot run from your past, Julia. He is still here, and I will never let you leave." A wave of icy despair washed over Julia. She was drowning, struggling to breathe, her once steadfast resolve crumbling beneath its weight. She could feel Emily faltering beside her, her grip loosening with every heartbeat. "Emily. We have to fight." Julia screamed, her voice barely breaking through the suffocating terror that surrounded them. Emily's face twisted in fear, tears streaming down her cheeks as she looked up at the monstrous shape. "But what if it's true? What if he needs us to help him?" "No!" Julia shouted, rage surging within her. "This is not Mark. This is its deception. We have to push it back." As if provoked by Julia's defiance, the shadow surged forward, tendrils stretching like hungry vines, racing toward them with a predatory urgency. The darkness was alive, breathing, pulsating with malevolent energy. "We belong together, Julia." It taunted, its voice echoing off the walls of their fear, mixing with the ghostly whispers that filled the air. "He is your heart. You need him, just as he needs you." The earth beneath them trembled, rattling them with raw energy. Faster now, the shadows converged from every which way, threatening to wrap around them entirely. The sickening laughter of twisted spirits echoed, bouncing off the unseen walls. "It's a trap." Julia gasped, tugging Emily back, but her friend remained transfixed, eyes wide with indecision. "You have to choose, Emily. You can't stay here." Emily's voice faltered, caught between loyalty and survival. An unsettling flicker of doubt crossed her face, and for a terrifying heartbeat, she looked like she might give in. Julia's heart raced. "Fight it. Please." She yanked Emily closer, feeling the warmth of her friend's skin fading, as if the shadows were leeching her vitality away. A sinister grin spread across the shadow's swirling face. "You see? Your friend is already lost. One step into the dark, and you'll both drown." With a primal scream, Julia recalled the flickering light they'd seen earlier, the fleeting hope they had sensed. "No, not like this. We're stronger together. Remember that." The light re-emerged in her mind, a beacon cutting through the gloom. She lifted her hands, steeling herself against the living nightmare before her. "Your lies won't hold us. We're not afraid." Suddenly, the light surged from within her. It radiated outward, pushing against the encroaching darkness, illuminating their surroundings like a sun breaking through storm clouds. The shadow shrieked, a sound of pure rage and fear. "You think the light can save you? It only shows you the truth." And just like that, the truth flooded in horrific images of Mark consumed by darkness, screams of anguish that pierced the veil of the void. Julia's heart sank. Were they truly too late to save him? No. It doesn't have to end this way. She felt the light in her hands, pulsating with energy, forcing back the shadows inch by inch. She could see the fissure behind the shadow, dark and deep, a gaping maw ready to swallow them whole. "Together," Julia shouted, gripping Emily's hand. "We can break free." But the darkness fought back, clawing at them, pulling with an insatiable hunger. The specter of Mark's voice twisted within it, cutting like a knife. "Join me, join us, don't listen." Julia screamed, summoning every ounce of willpower. The light brightened, splintering the air around them, each pulse igniting fleeting memories of laughter, warmth, love, a life before this nightmare. The shadow's form warped in agony, as if they had struck at its very core. And then, a flicker hope? Or a cruel taunt? With one final thrust of their combined strength, the light surged forward, a blazing projectile aiming to pierce the heart of the darkness. But a hand shot out, smooth and cold as stone, grasping Julia's wrist. You cannot escape your fate. The grip tightened, pulling her back, shadows swirling around her with desperate frenzy. And just like that, Julia understood she was face to face with the dark version of herself, raw fear, entrapment, all manifesting in shadow. This isn't your choice, it smiled, a wicked curl of its lips, and in that moment, Julia knew. The next steps would define everything. Would she face the darkness within? Or would she succumb to the shadows forever? Time slipped away, yet the choice loomed above them like an executioner's blade, poised to strike. In the suffocating grip of darkness, Julia felt her heartbeat slowing, the shadows swirling around her like a storm intent on consuming her spirit. She stared into the cold face of fear, recognizing its reflection staring back from the writhing shadows. This is just a part of you, it whispered, echoing Mark's voice, twisted with malice. To surrender is to set yourself free. No. Julia shouted, forcing herself to stand taller against the suffocating weight of despair. I won't give in. My strength comes from love, from hope. She felt a surge of warm fury inside her, a flicker against the encroaching dark. But now she wasn't alone. Emily stood beside her, fear giving way to fierce determination. Together. Emily shouted, eyes shining with an inner light as she gripped Julia's hand tightly. It was the final spark, igniting the flame of courage they needed to face the abyss. The shadows murmured ominously, shrieks of laughter dancing like a chilling wind around them. You can't escape the shadows. You're weak. Join us. But Julia wasn't weak, not anymore. With a deep, grounding breath, she recalled every shared moment with Mark, the laughter, the joy, the sense of home. She saw his face in her mind, filled with warmth and love. Mark, we're coming for you. She cried, more to herself than anything as she took a step forward, feeling the energy of her love rippling out, pushing back the sinister tendrils. In that surge of emotion, she plunged further toward the light. With every step, she felt the darkness pull harder, feeling sharp claws wrap around her ankles like icy chains. But Emily was by her side, their bond fiercely unyielding. As they moved together, the shadows shrieked in fury, thrashing around them, but they bore the light within. Now! Julia yelled, gritting her teeth as they sprinted toward the flickering light in the distance. In that moment, a moment of collective willpower mingled with raw fear suffused the air, blending into a solid resolve. They broke through the darkness, and the shadowy figure lunged, stretching its hands out grasping for their fading forms. But the light surged to meet them, and as they jumped into it, they felt the shadows scream behind them, a cacophony of rage crashing against the surface of their joy. The energy crashed over them like waves against the shore, washing the darkness away. Julia could almost touch the warmth as the shadows thinned, dissipating like morning mist. The light expanded, and she felt the vibrant pulse of life course through her veins, a melody of hope calling to the lost. And then, with one last surge of strength, she felt herself breaking free. In the blink of an eye, Julia and Emily emerged, sprawling onto solid ground. The basement was gone, the specter of doom, replaced by a vibrant, sunlit ground beneath them. They breathed in fresh air, disbelief flooding their senses as they looked around. But the joy was met with a heavy heart. There lay Mark, his figure crumpled under the weight of sorrow and shadows. Desperation clawed at Julia's throat. Mark! She cried, lunging towards him, meeting the warmth of his skin and tears escaping as she cradled his face. He blinked at her, confusion etching his features. Julia? Yes. It's me. We're safe now. She exclaimed, relief crashing over her as Emily rushed to Mark's side, her small hands grabbing his and pulling him from the lingering shadows that threatened to grasp him. But the darkness screeched in the distance, echoing its anger as tendrils curled back at the edges. You think this is over? You'll always be mine. No. Julia screamed back, defiance surging through her. You aren't welcome here. We'll keep fighting. With each word punctuating the thick air, her voice rang with power. The shadows recoiled, wailing in defeat as light filled every corner, pushing back their darkness. With their combined warmth, they turned to face the darkness, willing it to retreat further. As the last wisps of shadows dissolved, Julia felt a rush of warmth around them. Hope surged, and together, the trio stood tall, united against any lingering fears. They were no longer mere survivors, they were warriors. "Let us go home," she whispered, a tender smile breaking through the fear that once consumed them. A newfound light gleamed in the air and the world around them transformed into a kaleidoscope of vibrant colors, lush greens, and the joy marking a fresh start. Hand in hand, they stepped forward from the wreckage of loss, reaffirmed in their bond a mix of family, friends, and the indomitable spirit that carried them through. As they made their way out of Crestwood, the shadows faded into the distance, a haunting memory of challenges faced and conquered, but never forgotten. Together, they could overcome anything. And as the sun set on a new horizon, the Harrisons knew they had unearthed their true spirits, forged through trials, and illuminated by the love and tenacity that binds us all. Remember, true fans, the journey doesn't end here. So subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this gripping conclusion. It's your moment to show your support. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this amazing ending. You need to be part of our incredible community. Let us keep exploring together.